should not listen to men's rights advocates if you want to know what they have to say.
All the second stage tanks now pressurized. Astronauts report it feels good. T-minus 15 seconds. Guidance is internal. 12, 11, 10, 9. Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Like a furry torpedo to the jugular. This is Honey Badger Radio. Radio with Buddy.
Hello and welcome to HBR Talk 366. UN Women has thoughts about the Manosphere. I'm your host, Hannah Wallen, here with Nonsense Annihilator Lauren Brooks and the personification of perceptivity, Mike Stevenson. And in the background, we have the Doge in charge running the show, Brian Martinez. Tonight, we're still stepping away from the National Association of Gals to steal Rush Limbaugh's old classification for now.
The nags.
The nags, yeah. National Association, or we could call them the National Alliance, but we all know that the whole sisterhood thing is fake. To an even more toxic organization that is unfortunately international and more heavily funded. But before we get into that, we got to do what we got to do. As always, Honey Badger Radio dishes out a smorgasbord of thought-provoking discussions, and as experiences both recent and long past and tonight's show have demonstrated, the provoked thoughts are fighting back. They've made it clear that for people like us, relying on third-party payment platforms like Patreon to fund our work is treading on thin ice, or building our house in the path of a rapidly growing wildfire. In light of this, we strongly encourage our supporters to switch at least their support for us to feedthebadger.com, the most stable way to help us out. And if you want to tip us directly instead of relying on any social media platforms tip jar, the link for that is feedthebadger.com/justthetip. And as always, the same risk applies to our social media platforms, which is why you should further provoke the thought police by tracking our thought-provoking discussions on honeybadgerbrigade.com, where you can find a link to all of our content, as well as a link to feedthebadger.com in the drop-down menu at the top of the page. And this is one of those shows, right? We have seen, gosh, I can't think of the name of the stupid organization that's targeting video games, but we have seen a recent bloodbath from payment processors, basically targeting platforms that host games that hurt women's feelings.
Are we talking Collective Shout?
Yes, Collective Shout.
Like I've heard
it really should be
name.
called Collective Whine, because mostly they're just bitching about men being able to see images of women, adult women, that other women don't want men to be able to see. They want to gatekeep that, right?
Like
and they're fictional adult women.
It should be called Intimidating Shout. As a throwback to one of the many MMORPGs.
There we go.
Had that thing. And now that feminists are deeply embedded in the fabric of this kind of game, they're kind of going, let's see what spells we can cast. Intimidating Shout. Oh, hell yes. It's the first spell that feminists think of casting.
Yeah.
The first and only spell that feminists think of casting, Intimidating Shout.
Yep. And that's all they do, right? Is just nag the establishment to exercise more power over men on behalf of, or basically in women's name. Yeah, even though not all women, in fact, most women don't agree with them. They still get what they want because it's convenient for the establishment that women are asking them to exercise more authority. And I don't know if these women are stupid or malicious or both. It's really difficult to tell sometimes. But they're essentially paving the way for a totalitarian clampdown on all types of speech. the minute that you hand over your freedom to express, anything that's not actually an attack on somebody, like you haven't kidnapped somebody's children and made, illicit images of them. It's all drawn images of adult women and adult men. Like the minute that you hand over the ability to do the latter, you are essentially handing over the ability to say, no, you can't protest your specific political cause. You can't protest against or for abortion. You can't protest against or for divorce rights, different types of divorce rights that women have wanted. You can't protest or for your side of the custody rights argument. You can't do any of that because the local government has the right to take away your free speech rights if somebody else might be offended. And you don't see vast swatches of men arguing this. It's just women. Women want that safety net. If they don't like what people are saying, then they argue against the right to say it. And it's very dangerous. That's the minute that you give the government that right, just like any other right that you hand over to the government, they will abuse it. And they will abuse it in ways you didn't anticipate and you aren't going to be happy with. And when that comes back to haunt Democrat women, when that comes back to haunt feminists, when that comes back to haunt women in general, I'm not going to have any sympathy because you told them they could do this. You asked for it. You gave your consent. And it's really going to be ugly having to fight this, honestly. Especially when they start censoring the right to protest against totalitarian abuses, similarly to the way the UK and Canada and many other countries do. Like, if that starts happening in the United States as a result of payment processors, which to a degree it already has, then you're not going to be happy when they decide that they don't like one of your causes. But in the meantime, we are continuing.
And that's when you start shooting people, by the way. I almost said you start shooting N-words because I'm compelled to say that word as though it means people. It's become part of my vocabulary now. But that's when you start shooting.
That's essentially what does happen.
That is the whole
historically.
point. That is the whole point of the United States, I believe. You can say what you want, and if they don't let you say what you want, you start shooting. And by I mean the people standing in your way.
Yeah, and unfortunately, there's enough people that are fed up with this that's not off the table, right? That's a very distinct possibility.
And God bless the USA for allowing me to say this.
Yeah.
Despite me being a temporary visitor to these lands. The fact that you treat me better than my own country treats me speaks volumes.
Yeah. So, yeah, it does. To be honest, it's I don't think any other country in the world does that. Right? We have our standard. We don't violate that standard. When we violate that standard, we lose everything. It's very much like every other amendment in the Bill of Rights. If you were to remove the powers that do separate the power of the church from the power of the state, you would create a situation where laws would be based strictly on religious doctrine, and people would not be happy. I guarantee you, there would be hell to pay. Pun intended. If we created a situation where the 14th Amendment didn't apply, or the 6th Amendment didn't apply, or any of the different aspects of the Bill of Rights, you would see more confiscation of your property. You would see people being thrown in jail and kept for years, with their commonly being thrown in jail and kept for years with their hearing just getting indefinitely delayed by the state and no way to stop it. You just get locked away on an allegation, and it might never get revisited again. Right? You would see common occurrences where people's exculpatory evidence just wouldn't be admissible for no reason other than that the judge wanted this person convicted. Right? If we got rid of the 19th, though, that's not part of the Bill of Rights, Chris. If we got rid of the 19th, we might actually have some economic success again as a country. If it was just men voting and not women, we might actually see an end to the tax and spend economy where the majority of the non-military spending is welfare.
Or how about if nobody paid taxes and nobody voted?
Well, that would be called anarchy.
But then there wouldn't even be yeah, exactly.
I would support that.
Yes, I say. Yes.
No monarch,
to the side of the camera.
No monarch, no president, no Congress, no nothing. Just get rid of all of it. No Department of Education, no Department of anything. The states can coordinate with each other on defense and on international actions.
100 years ago, it would have sounded. 100 years ago, it would have sounded like a crazy impossibility, because people can't possibly communicate with each other at that speed across the country or indeed the world at the same time. But nowadays, they can.
Now we can.
Now we can communicate instantaneously with anyone, anywhere in the world. This seems like a good time to have to shut down this fucking machine that purports to bring us together when it does anything but bring us together. Private enterprise has done that far better than anything this machine we call the government ever possibly could have.
Yep. In the meantime, the nation does have some things that it could do about the payment processing thing. You think about it. The issue with the banks, the issue with payment processors, at least more recently, in the last few years, and it's probably been this way for a lot longer than we've been witnessing, is that they have essentially created a social credit system for corporations. And so if you're a corporation of any size, big, small, short or tall, any corporation worldwide, any corporation that's got a lot of pull in a particular area, like social media, or one that controls people's access to in any type of communications or property ownership, anything like that, right? And banks, especially like local banks and stuff that have to rely on payment processors for money transfers, every single one of them, right, they're all subject to a social credit system where if they do business with people who have political statements, make political statements, or engage in political activism that the banks that control the payment processors do not like, they get defunded. You don't get a loan, or we won't process your payments. Patreon was forced to end their relationships with people because of that. Various social media companies have been forced to ban people because of that. National banks and even some international banks have actually been forced to debank people because of that. And that's something that only can be handled by essentially taking away banks' power to determine who gets to make payments and who doesn't. And the exact opposite happened. The Obama administration interfered. They essentially came along and said, "Oh, there's terrorism, and in order to fight this terrorism, the banks have to debank people that are engaging in political activism that the Obama administration does not like." And as a result, you saw a significant amount of, I can't remember what it was called, Operation Choke Point activity targeting anything that wasn't far left wing. And it continued from the midst of the Obama administration past the point where the law was repealed, or the policy was repealed. And the banks were told, "Oh, don't do that anymore." And, "Oh, sure, we're not doing that anymore." And then they did it under the radar, and they're still doing it today. So yeah, they're doing it on behalf of organizations like Collective Shout and the UN Women organization, which is, by the way, funded by taxpayer dollars from the United States. So using your money, these women are defining and describing you based on their terms, and they're targeting you for this same sort of financial discrimination, which does need to be ended through national policy. That you can't do business in our country if you are going to use leaning on businesses in this country to discriminate against people on the basis of their political views as your means of controlling whether or not you and your political goals get criticized.
So, for anyone who's worried that Europe and North America might fall under a system like the Chinese credit system, it's going to be much worse than that. The Chinese social credit system depends on how much you support China, on how much you focus on your in-group preference. Some might call that right wing, but nobody seems to care when it's the right wing of a country that is somehow immune from this narrative. No, when we get social credit scores in Europe and North America, when I say that, I mean USA and Canada, it's going to be quite the opposite. You're going to get scored social credit when you prioritize any country other than your own. And I know that sounds counterintuitive, given that China is a communist country, so you'd think they'd be the world's most left-wing thing. But no, it sort of depends on what you define as left and right wing. Like, China is a communist country, but it's very much in favor of its own people, particularly the Han people. And if that happened in Europe or North America, it would be called right wing. Racial and cultural hegemony and focusing on one's own people. But yeah, paradoxically enough, no, like I said, when we get the social credit score, it will be the exact opposite. You will lose social credit if you favor your own country. You will lose social credit if you favor your own people. Now, you might wonder how the opposite thing could happen in Europe and North America that is happening in China. And yes, that's a good question. That's a good query. Like, why would the same system be operated in opposite directions in different countries? And you might want to ask yourself how it happened in China in favor of the Chinese government, and then it happened in all these other Western countries in favor of China. Like, Western governments copy the Chinese government in terms of credit score, and you get your life ruined if you don't do what you're told. You get your life improved if you do what you're told. And it all comes back to China. Isn't it funny how it all comes back to China and any other communist nation that's trying to undermine the Western nations who still have any semblance of individual rights? And mentioning that is going to start another shitstorm in the comments between whether this comes down to individual rights or collective rights. And I don't have time for that. Ain't nobody got time for that. But so I guess I'll leave it there.
Yeah, this is one of those subjects, like, we've been covering this for years. We've been covering this, I want to say since 2013 or 2014, when we first became aware of Chris. I just typed about it in the chat. But Credit Sesame is in the United States. It's just billed as a company that helps you keep track of your credit, but it comes out of China, and it is a company that helps you keep track of your social credit score in China. And it is going to be a pathway here in the US for doing the same thing, for implementing the social credit score system. So this is something that, like, there's a lot of people that are talking about it now that are like, well, have you talked about this organization or that organization? We've been talking about this since before those organizations have been part of the public discussion. And the organization that you actually need to be concerned about, because everything else that you might mention, like individual people, individual companies and stuff, are all like branched out from the World Economic Forum and the people that are involved in the World Economic Forum. None of them are independent. None of them are things that if you destroy or outlaw or take over or otherwise gain control over, say, Palantir or any of the individual billionaires that are involved in this problem will not go away from that, because it's kind of like pulling the foot part, I guess, off of the leg of a spider. Even if that leg is a little bit handicapped by that, it's still got 7 other legs, and you haven't removed its fangs. And so it'll still come after you. So, like, don't start getting bogged down with the fingertips when you're kind of ignoring the body and the brain of this issue. In the meantime, like the organization that we are talking about today, we're talking about it because Gynocentrism is used as a means of shoehorning this in, right? People have this tendency. If you come along and say we're here to take away this freedom, we think people don't need this freedom anymore, and this freedom is interfering with government power and government control over the population. We're just going to eliminate it, with this law or policy. It's all gone. Sorry, you can't have that anymore. Bye. People get upset, right? They recognize that they are being railroaded out of their civil rights, and they'll protest. They'll vote people out of office. They'll have temper tantrums that are completely justified. They might get violent, and they will put the kibosh to that behavior right away. But when you come along and you say women are victims of abuses of this particular civil right. And therefore, we need to compromise this civil right an amount in order to protect women. The entire population fails to hear we're compromising your civil right. And says, oh, we're protecting women. Okay, we'll go along with that. We won't complain. Right? And you come along and do that in little increments. We're going to compromise that civil right a little more because women are still being victimized by abuses of it. And they don't really get clear about what an abuse is. Like, it's considered an abuse of the right to due process if an accused man who's being tried for some violent crime against a woman proves his innocence using exculpatory evidence. And it started with, if that evidence might embarrass or slut shame the woman, you can't use it. And the goalpost moved to, if that evidence might make a woman appear to have consented when she claims she didn't, on the basis of her overt behavior, you can't use that. If it's post incident communication that proves that she's lying and that's going to embarrass her, we don't want you using that, right? And it goes on. It gets worse every time they make a little bit of a cut to your civil right. And that's been going on for more than half a century in the United States. We're just going to change the definition of this crime to every possible way that we can expand it to accuse more men of it without accusing more women.
Sounds like an awfully weird thing for a patriarchy to be doing, right?
Yeah, guys,
right?
this patriarchy sucks.
Yeah, right.
Oh, geez. Worst patriarchy ever. I mean,
ever.
Where's the oppression?
God, men can't even do that right. You can't even oppress us properly.
Oh my gosh. We women are victims of not being oppressed.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is just an extension of that. So when you hear what UN Women has to say about the men's rights spectrum and men's issues discussion spectrum, be aware that their terminology, their definitions, their descriptions, and so on, those are going to be used by UN Women and eventually just the UN. If they're not stopped, they're going to be used to inform policy, to inform international law, to influence law in various countries against you by portraying women as victims of the boundaries that you're setting. And any complaints that you might have against being discriminated against. Sorry. You're not allowed to complain when your nation, your country, makes it a lesser crime with a lesser term used and less stigma attached to punishment when a woman commits a violent crime against you, as opposed to if you commit a violent crime against a woman. Right? You're not allowed to complain about that. You're not allowed to complain about your children being kept from you and not being able to mentor them. You're not even allowed to complain about what it does to them. Right? You're not allowed to complain that it makes them 50% more likely to get in trouble with the law if they don't have you in their lives. And you're not allowed to ask for protection for your parental rights on that basis, because women. and you're definitely not allowed to complain that women can vote to send you to war. And you can't say no. But they are not obligated to step up and do anything for their country under any circumstances by any law. Like, that's apparently a bridge too far. Before we get into the actual article, we have two super chats, or super chows, I mean. Richard Bier gave us $5 and said something to keep in mind about the hockey team. This might be from previous show, because it looks like it was, on the 5th. The hockey team is that Canada doesn't have a prohibition on double jeopardy. Oh, this is the hockey team that was falsely accused. So the Crown could always bring charges again and go through further criminal trials. Being acquitted doesn't ensure that they can't be repeatedly prosecuted. I think that the particular radio personality was put through 4 criminal trials to get the desired verdict. On one acquittal, the judge had been referred to some specialized legal training. Think that W. Leaf might have been involved. And that's another thing. Like in the U.S., if you're acquitted, you're acquitted, right? In Canada, if you're acquitted, they try again, or at least they can. And in terms of acquittals where there was evidence that the other side couldn't refute, all they have to do is just push for change to the law. You can't submit that evidence. We had, can't remember his name, but there was a case we discussed a while back where part of the evidence that was submitted was a whistleblower from within the group of female accusers against this guy came in and gave the defense all of their communications, organizing their false allegations against him. And so submitted into evidence were those communications and their communications with him after the incidents that they were calling rape, where they said, had a great time, can't wait to do it again. And I don't think I've ever said that to anybody who's ever done anything horrible to me. Had a great time being done wrong by you. Let's do it again. Nope. Not a thing. Right? And immediately after that case concluded, feminist organizations began lobbying for changes to Canadian rape law that would ban those types of communications as part of the ban of entering any kind of evidence that has to do with her sex life. You can't talk about her sexual behavior outside of that incident. So in other words, they knew that evidence was genuinely exculpatory.
Yeah.
And they didn't want it to be admissible. And if you combine those two facts, you get the government can just change the law so you can't admit the evidence that proves you innocent and try again.
That's just disgusting, but it sounds, right in line with Canada. And was it Aziz Ansari?
Nope.
Okay, it's a different case.
No.
Yeah.
The name started with a G and was, I believe, an Italian name. But it was a pretty name, I remember that. But it just was it's one that I can't drag into my head right now. Or rather drag out of the little recess somewhere in the back of my head where it's being stored. But
yeah, no, Canada is just. Yeah. I don't know how anybody takes anything seriously that comes out of that country.
Right. No, I don't consider Canada to have an actual legal system. They have a Rube Goldberg device for railroading people that
John Gomeshi.
Like. Yes.
John Gomeshi, yes.
Gomeshi. And yeah, he he's lucky that they didn't do that to him, because
Yeah.
that law was really pushed. And I don't know if it has been made law or not, but if it has been, like, that puts every guy that gets falsely accused in jeopardy. We got $5 from Meredith G, who said HBR Talk 366, honey for the Badgers, and $5 from Xeranx, who said this is why I stress USEC cases for Bitcoin when I come across posts talking about it. The banks and governments denied wanting to implement central bank digital currencies, CBDCs, and then switched to actively showing interest in them, followed by outrightly talking about them. If CBDCs are implemented, the stock of Bitcoin will drop sharply and people will cry about the loss of their money. Moneyed interests already manipulated the crypto market to leverage their holdings so that they're more capable to push their weight around. So maybe it doesn't matter. CBDCs are still a threat as long as crypto like Bitcoin exists independently. Regular people have the means of pushing for their own goals, and the banks can get stuffed. Hopefully all of that was understood. Sorry for this being slightly off the path of the topic. The only drawback with, in my opinion, with with the various types of cryptocurrency that are out there is that you still have to buy them with transfers of cash initially. What you're investing when you invest in cryptocurrency is fiat currency. You're investing your national currency through your bank and through your payment processors. So until payment processors are banned from preventing people from doing business with each other on the basis of this individual being canceled, that's still going to affect the cryptocurrency market. They can just say, sorry, you can't use any type of credit card or any type of direct transfer from your bank. And unless there's a system set up where you can actually go into a store, like a brick and mortar store, with cash and hand it over to a salesperson to purchase cryptocurrency that you can then use for online purchases, you will not be able to buck that. And in fact, Canada is a test case for that too, because they did pass a law that allows them to control the purchase and use of existing cryptocurrency a while back, and that did interfere with funding of protests and stuff. So, like, we're still looking at, no matter what other route you take, there's no way to get around the fact that the public is going to have to find a way to stop banks and payment processors from making small governments out of themselves and taking control over your freedom of association, because that's what they're doing. So, in the meantime, like I said, one of the methods that's being used to push for this, and specifically to push against us, is this characterization that we're going to look at tonight. Manosphere ideology. Now, remember, we've gone through, and this article, we talked about the characterization of the manosphere as a growing threat that is gaining traction, that is harmful. Like, you can see the terminology they used, and we went through these earlier paragraphs to get you through. This is them poisoning the water. So what you're reading now is after the article characterizes the entire manosphere through poisoning the water with terminology, portraying us as dangerous, hateful, influential, a threat to women specifically, and a challenge to UN women specifically, and then promising that they're taking action to stop online misogyny and digital abuse, right? So in light of that, they have said the Manosphere is an umbrella term for online communities that have increasingly promoted narrow and aggressive definitions of what it means to be a man.
You know, I'm sorry because this is just sticking out in my mind. Wasn't it the Pew Research that found that it's mostly women who are online being hateful and abusive towards other people?
Yes.
So
Yes, they did.
When are we going to like focus on that? But no. It's just men existing online and speaking about issues that directly affect them, and complaining or talking about it, or just just saying, hey, there's a problem here that we need to discuss. That's a problem. But women can just go online with impunity and just say and do the nastiest things to each other, and that's not a problem. Like we can't talk about that. No, of course not, because that would be that's oppressing women. That's not the right kind of misogyny.
I mean, it's pretty pretty standard though. I mean, most abusive people are women. Women can get away with it, right?
Mm-hmm.
The stats on intimate partner and sexual violence demonstrates that approximately 2/3 plus of a partner abuse is female initiated. When it's one way and there's only one abuser in the relationship, 70% is female perpetrated, right? And when it's stalking, harassment, things like that, it's mostly female perpetrated.
Yep.
We only do something about it when it's male perpetrated.
Yeah.
But when it's female perpetrated, it's much more widespread. People don't take it as seriously until she hurts him,
Mm-hmm.
and you end up in situations where, because the Jodi Arias case, for instance, he was trying to break up with her, and they had the day that she killed him. She had come to his house basically without his permission and nagged him into makeup sex, and then she waited until he was naked and vulnerable in the shower, and you can see that his face is wet from the shower, so he's naked, blind, and vulnerable in that moment. And it's just, when you see the pictures that she took that actually were published online, right, that was horrific, the fear in his eyes. And nobody took her stalking and harassment and cluster B, clusterfuck personality seriously until she went completely apeshit on that guy, shot him, stabbed him multiple times, and then took pictures of her crime, to brag about it, basically, or to memorialize it, and later tried to use that as a means of claiming that she had been abused. This is not an abuse victim, right? It's a stone cold psychopath.
Yeah.
But that is how women get away with that behavior until the point where they kill someone. If a man had done all the same things that Arias did leading up to the killing, he'd have been like, the woman's friends would have had him out of her life. He'd have been in jail for stalking and harassment.
Yeah.
But yeah, narrow and aggressive definitions of what it means to be a man. And this is their claim that their straw man of masculinity, which is toxic masculinity, is our description of how it means to be a man, what it means to be a man. When we read this part last week, though, and the false narrative that feminism and gender equality have come at the cost of men's rights. I believe we gave some examples, and we've given examples prior. The Manosphere targets male audiences on social media, podcasts, gamer communities, dating apps, just about all digital spaces. Many participants engage with it while searching for forums to openly discuss or learn about men's issues, which, this is a funny way to say, how dare people wanting to talk about men's issues talk to men about men's issues. How dare men have this conversation out of women's control?
Mm.
And somebody's asking, can I show a full shot of the page? No, it's not a screenshot. I'm going through the article. This is a link. The article's title, this is on UN Women's site. It's called "What is the Manosphere and Why Should We Care?" And it was published in May. So if you want to look it up, that's the title you should search for. Let's go back down to this. Yeah, there we go. There we go. Yeah, this is where we really were last time. So, just so you know, yeah. While groups within the Manosphere do not all share the same beliefs, many are united in their misogyny. Misogyny, right? It's misogyny to criticize feminist ideology and feminists' trampling of civil rights, where they target men, but in the end, when your due process rights are compromised, everybody's due process rights are compromised.
Yeah.
They start with the one thing, and it expands. If you can't embarrass your accuser in court with information that contradicts their narrative about who they are and why what they say should automatically be believed, then you can't do that when the government accuses you of something either. You can't do that when your employer wants to say that, no, they didn't wrongfully fire you or otherwise discriminate against you. You're just a bad employee, right? If men can't do that, ultimately women won't be able to either. Women are so short-sighted for this stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, our misogyny, a prejudice and resentment of women and girls. In many ways, the Manosphere descended from a long line of anti-feminist movements. So here we are again. Before they start describing what groups they're talking about and characterizing them using their own terminology, they have to, once again, just one more time, poison the waters so you don't get to actually consider anything about these groups. And they start with involuntarily celibate men, because they don't really care about involuntarily celibate women.
No.
They say these major manosphere groups spread myths, pseudoscience, and lies based on gender, right? And so incels they describe as men who believe that men are entitled to sex. Now, I've spent quite a bit of time with talking to incels and hearing from incels. I've looked into some incel forums. That belief is not expressed anywhere outside of feminist claims about incels.
Mischaracterization. Yeah.
Yeah. What is described is that when it comes to sex, women are the gatekeepers. It's recognized that consent is essentially a woman's territory, right? And it's provable that it's essentially a woman's territory, because when you talk about sexual violence, for instance, men do not have the same legal protection for their right to say no as women do. So getting a woman's consent has been expanded, in as a requirement from don't do anything against her will to if she feels bad about it later, she can say she didn't consent and you're still in trouble. Even if she communicated consent to you in multiple ways, like reaching down your pants and grabbing your dick, that doesn't count if you didn't get on your knees and beg for permission and get told, with pom-poms in hand, yes, yes, definitely touch me. That is the gist of the enthusiastic consent narrative. And the worst part is, a woman can always say that her consent wasn't enthusiastic, that she felt intimidated into giving it, that she was afraid to tell you no, and she didn't even have to prove she had a reason to be afraid.
Mm-hmm.
She certainly doesn't have to prove you gave her a reason to be afraid. So, yeah, at the same time, women who want sex and are rejected respond violently, like women in bars who will glass a guy for turning him down. Women have gone so far as to, there was a news story a while back of a woman who attacked a man with a machete. She demanded sex from him, and when she was later arrested, they decided, even though she used a weapon to force a man to comply with her sexual demands, they decided she wasn't considered a rapist. It was just she was mentally ill. All rapists are mentally ill. Sexual intimacy is about finding, somebody that wants to be with you and making a connection with them. Rape is the opposite of that. It's the exact polar opposite of that. And if you get off on that, there's something mentally wrong with you, male or female. Sorry. So involuntary celibates supposedly believe that men are entitled to sex. One of the most articulated thing in incel forums is that it's very clear that men are not entitled to sex, but women are. But they get to choose who has sex. And they are abusive about rejection and about controlling sexual access. And they're very shallow in their reasons for rejection. And there isn't a single part of that isn't true. Like, incels are right about women. And the women purposely deprive them of it. Extremist incel culture promotes rape and assault and brings together other ideologies, they say, including racism and homophobia. Incels have been linked to acts of mass violence. So let's look at these things and one at a time. Extremist incel culture promotes rape and assault. This is essentially putting together a bunch of buzzwords with an allegation while providing no proof as a means of, again, undermining this group. Right? If incel culture actually promoted rape and assault, given how many of them have bought into the various maxing dialogues and made changes to themselves on the basis of those, you would see a huge uptick. If they were promoting rape, you would see a huge uptick in rape. But that's not the case. They haven't promoted rape and assault. Now, they do tell rape jokes. But rape jokes primarily make fun of the rapist. Bringing together other ideologies, including racism and homophobia. Actually, there's a lot of incels out there that are straight that lament not being gay because life would be easier if they were gay. If they were gay, they wouldn't have to deal with the way that women treat men. The other thing is that there are gay incels. If you live in a community where you're the only gay dude and you don't really have much opportunity to get out and date, you might be an incel. Incels have been linked, they said, to acts of mass violence. This one is a little more complicated. There have been several acts of mass violence where the individual involved has been described widely by establishment media as an incel. Not due to actually being an incel who participates in incel forums and has the complaints or makes the complaints that incels make, but because the media just associates the individual's complaints with incels. And the guys that are like, they're sort of their top 5, they all had other things that were their main cause for what they did. Mostly mental illness, but they were not actually incels who were attacking anybody based on incel ideology, which incel ideology doesn't exactly exist. Like, incels describe things, but they don't have a unified, here's how you have to live in order to be an incel thing. Like, they don't even all agree on whether or not inceldom has to be a permanent thing. So, in any case, the claim that incels have been linked to acts of mass violence is a weasel word. It's very much like when somebody says, Andrew Tate has been accused of human trafficking. Now, if you're talking about, this is the attitude feminists have, and it's widespread toward Andrew Tate, and someone makes the argument that it's unreasonable, the fact that he's been accused, kind of contributes to that attitude, because women a lot of times just will automatically believe those types of accusations, right? Just like women will automatically believe those articles. They won't look any further into it. They won't discover that, one guy targeted mostly men and really didn't, have an incel outlook. He had a narcissistic outlook. Another guy was abused by his mother, and seems to be the actual basis for his targeting. And then you have, I think they tried to call the Florida school shooter, the Parkland shooter, an incel, when in fact actually he was just a really fucked up kid who was failed by every adult in his life. Didn't have anything to do with incels. There's one or two in Canada that they did the same thing with. That again, no involvement with incels. It was proved he was guided into statements about being part of the Manosphere in his initial interview, and then it was proved later that he didn't have that involvement. But that part wasn't widely reported because it wasn't convenient for establishment media. So when it really comes down to it, the so-called incel mass killers don't exist. They are false framing of cases that actually had other causes. And they'll do that over and over again. Like, every time they get an opportunity to characterize an aspect of like mass violence or any other profoundly bad thing that happens, they'll do it. But it does scare enough people into thinking that something needs to be done about incels. Really easy to do something about incels, right? Maybe treat them like human beings instead of scum under your shoes.
Yeah. That would be nice. That's a way to go. Yeah. But no, it's just, oh, you can't get laid, so let's just throw you under the bus like you're just a piece of trash. And that it grinds my fucking gears, man. I cannot stand that. you know, and
Mhm.
the unfortunate thing is that they've taken the label and just applied it to anyone, everywhere, you know, and even when it doesn't really fit, right? It's just a way to, um, you know, just throw shade on people because you don't agree with me. It's disgusting. It's disgusting. You're taking a group of people who actually have a legitimate reason to have, you know, they have a gripe. They have a real reason to feel the way that they feel about whatever, you know. But no, it's just you can't get laid. So oh my god, you're just trash. Let's just throw you away. Well, it's not gonna end badly at all, right?
Right,
Yeah,
right.
incels are just men who haven't been officially blessed on the altar of women. That's what it is. It's just like this paradox you discover in your teenage years that women don't, or I should say, teenage girls don't like teenage boys who are virgins. We can talk all this shit about how women are considered pure for being virgins and men are considered losers for being virgins, and it all comes down to that. Like, women will not be interested in you until you've had sex with a woman. And this is a hell of a conundrum that teenage boys find themselves in. Like, who am I? What woman am I supposed to find that is going to give me the blessing that is going to make all the other women like me? And it does, and that is exactly what happens. There are many memes along the lines of, as soon as you get a girlfriend, all the other girls look at you with that with that come to bed eyes. Oh, now that you've had the blessing of a woman, I suddenly want you. Like a day ago when you were a virgin, you were nothing to me. You were a not person. You were a ghost person. But now that you've had the blessing, the official blessing of the touch of a woman, now you're a real person. That's how it works from the moment we pass puberty for the rest of our lives. And I say it's paradoxical in all manner of ways. For everything feminists say about how women are considered sluts if they've touched too many men, well, men are considered incels if they haven't touched enough women, or any women in a recent enough time. And it's because the touch of a man is considered corrosive,
Corrupting.
corrupting, whereas the
Yeah.
touch of a woman is like being touched by God. In the religion we find ourselves in nowadays, being touched by a woman is like being touched by Jesus. Like you're not accepted into the faith until you can be proved to have received the magical touch of a woman. And people look at this and call it a patriarchy. It's maddening. Like, I don't know
Yep.
how we get this across to normies when they've been taught this shit so long that they think, oh, women are considered sluts if they have sex with men, whereas men are considered duds if they have sex with women, and that's a male privilege. Like, no, like receiving the touch of the holy ones makes you a man who is acceptable to other women. Not receiving the touch of the demonic ones is what makes a woman holy. Like, how do people not see through this? That we live in a society and with a general overlook where the touch of a man is demonic and the touch of a woman is angelic, and somehow
It's
this is a patriarchy.
female
It's
narcissism.
yeah,
That's how they don't see through it.
it's a religious female narcissism.
Yeah. Yep. And that extends to every one of these groups too. They go on to characterize us, men's rights activists, as often taking an academic tone to claim that feminism and women's rights to vote, to education, to leadership position. Nobody, by the way, has a right to men don't have a right to a leadership position. They have to earn it. What feminists are mad about is that women also have to earn it. And that's what they fight. They fight women having to earn it. They want it to be handed to them. Yeah, that women's rights have disadvantaged men. That's the claim. MRA preachers suggest I've met very few MRA preachers, by the way. Suggest that society is gynocentric, that is dominated by female interests. So that's not what gynocentrism is. I have a definition for you. Just give me a second. Dang it. While I'm talking about that, though, the academic tone argument that they're making, right? So men's rights activists cite research, often feminist research, by the way, and also discuss the history of law and government policy, which is an academic discussion. So it's not an academic tone. They're mad that we are describing reality, and we don't sound stupid when we do it. Like, that's essentially their complaint. These guys don't sound like idiots. If they sounded like idiots, we could make them go away. But in any case, so that they're actually just angry that we're not. They can't use sounding academic themselves, which a lot of what feminists say is academic gobbledygook, buzzword soup, essentially. So you don't have this claim being made so much about feminists. They've built an entire body of or academic area of writing and fake research that is based on claims that haven't really been verified, validated. They haven't been tested properly. They haven't been challenged within the feminist movement. And then they take those claims and they use them as the basis for, say, surveys. So feminists claim that it should be considered rape if a woman is even just a little bit tipsy and she has sex with a man, that eliminates her ability to consent. Even if her consent is enthusiastic, she is fully able to appraise her actions, has no regrets after the event. Feminists claim that he has raped her. And so as a result of that, they base their questions in sexual misconduct prevalence survey methods. Like, they base their questions on that assumption that is true, that all women who have had some alcohol are victims of rape. If they so much as change their minds about what they were going to do during the evening because a guy bought them a drink, that constitutes them being raped. Right? So yeah, that's feminist academia right there. Feminist academia is about false framing and using repeated insistence that their false framing be adopted as a means of advocating for changes of standards within the culture and changes of standards within law and policy. Alcohol facilitated rape under the law has historically been determined by the ability of the alleged victim to appraise her actions. So if she didn't know what she was doing, if she didn't know where she was, if she couldn't get up and walk by herself, if she maybe didn't understand the situation because she was too drunk to get a grasp on what was happening, or remember her own values. If she passed out, if she, had to have it, like you later on had to have explained to her what had happened because she couldn't remember. And, there had been other evidence that she was too drunk to understand it when it was happening to her. Like those conditions were required. If her blood alcohol content was super high, things like that. And that wasn't satisfactory to feminists. They didn't want to limit alcohol facilitated rape to situations in which a woman actually couldn't determine for herself what she was or was not going to do based on her own interests and desires. They wanted it to include instances where she was simply mildly compromised in terms of her inhibitions. Where she might be a little bit more relaxed than she was earlier on in the night. And as a result, she might have less anxiety associated with saying yes. Or maybe she changed her mind about this guy because he was generous enough to buy her a drink, which, does happen. But yeah, it's us, right, that use academia to make these claims, not feminists that use academia to demonize men. Men have been disadvantaged, by the way. If a man gets married, has a couple of kids with his wife, even if, they really are his kids, which in approximately a third of cases, there's evidence that that's not true. Right? There's evidence that at least one might not be their kids. If she decides that she's going to cheat and leave, she doesn't want to stay because he doesn't do the laundry. If she decides that she could have a happier life on her own, anything that results in her deciding to leave the marriage. When they go to divorce court, it's presumed before they ever walk into court that she's the more important parent, that the kids don't need to be with him, that his parenting is not important to them, but his wallet is, and that he's the bad guy and the divorce is his fault. And he has to fight tooth and nail to protect his right to any property that he has worked for during the marriage. And sometimes property that he owned prior to the marriage, quite frequently property that he owned prior to the marriage. He has to fight for the right to parent his own children. And he has to fight for the right to have enough of his earnings left in his possession after the marriage that he doesn't become homeless. And all of those things he will be fighting at a disadvantage because of gynocentric policy known as feminist jurisprudence. And yes, that comes from feminist activism. And that's just in family court. If he is accused of a violent crime against a woman, his due process rights are compromised. His public reputation is compromised. His ability to recover that reputation, even if he's acquitted, is compromised. And his entire experience is going to be one of being abused by the state on the word of a woman. So if he's in the workplace and a woman wants his job, all she has to do is accuse him of inappropriate behavior toward her in the workplace. And it doesn't even have to be sexual. She can accuse him of not talking to her enough. And as a result, indicating misogyny because he's avoiding her. That's enough. I've seen men disciplined in the workplace for that. Even when other women besides the accuser were defending them. He talks to me just fine. I don't see why he has a problem with you. Well, that's just gaslighting in the workplace. You can't even have that. So, yeah, are men disadvantaged? Yeah, they can be fired because a woman wants their job. They can be railroaded into jail because a woman is mad at them or doesn't want to admit that she cheated on her boyfriend or, otherwise has a reason to falsely accuse them of a violent crime they didn't commit. Right? They can have their children taken away on the word of a woman. They can have their children taken away without the word of a woman, just on the legal assumption that the woman is the more important parent. Right? And if they don't want that to happen, in the midst of having all of their money taken by the state and transferred to a woman, they have to pay for a legal case to fight it. So gynocentrism is not dominated by feminist interest. Gynocentrism, a gynocentric society is a society in which there is a dominant or exclusive focus on women in theory or practice, leading to heavy influences. Like, everybody matters, but females matter more, in other words. Prioritization of female interests in the legal system, in the culture, in the economic system. The social standard is one that, guys have shoved down their throats from early childhood. The first instance of it is the first time a little boy at some family event gets up with the other kids to go to the table where all the potluck dishes are and hears that the girls go before him because ladies first. Right? That's the first time. And that's shoved down their throats their whole lives. Right? They get told by girls in elementary school, I can hit you, but you can't do anything to me because I'm a girl. And I'm smaller and weaker than you. But I can hit you all I want. All I have to do is say you did something. And nobody tells the girls, don't do that. That's unladylike. They just tell the boys, well, you got to find a way to deal with that without lashing out because ladies first. Ladies first. Gynocentrism is essentially that. Ladies first. In all things. Everywhere. All the time. I'm sure there are guys in the audience that'll remember the first time that happened to them. Back of the line, right? Ladies first. Hold the door, please. Ladies first. Limited seating, lining up for a treat, ladies first. Give up your seat on the bus, ladies first. And everybody but me is muted.
All of your stories are anecdotal, man. Every time this happened to you, it was just something that just happened to you and no other man ever. And you should shut the fuck up and take it. Whereas everything that has ever happened to any woman ever has happened to all women ever. And women should be rewarded for this disadvantage. We've all seen the playbook. It's boring at this point.
Yeah.
I know we find ourselves still having to talk about it because as boring as it is, it's still fucking going on.
Yep.
Yeah, and I have a real hard time calling these people ladies because they do not act like ladies. They're just people with vaginas that are given special fucking treatment because of said vagina. It's ridiculous. Teach women to be fucking ladies again.
Yeah.
Can we do that? No, or is that misogyny too?
Yeah. Yup. Teaching women to be ladies again will be hard because teaching women to be ladies, a lady used to have a specific characteristic of consideration for other people.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Modern women don't do that. It is antithetical to modern femininity to consider other people equally to, much less before oneself. But
It's this concept of being a better person that a lot of people online seem to think they can just say and not have to elaborate any further than that. Like a lot of people will say, "You're teaching men to bend over backwards, but all you can do is teach women to be better people." And I'm like, yes, I agree with the sentiment, but what does it mean to be better people?
yeah,
Like at the same time, feminists will tell men to just be better people. What does that mean? Like, this is why it's a completely useless phrase and a completely useless sentiment. What does it mean to be a better person? To me, it's a useless phrase. It's a useless sentiment because you first have to establish some sense of morality, some sense of what it means to be a better person in relation to other people. And men sort of have this. Men sort of have, like, treat women like human beings. You don't have to expect anything from women, but you have to treat them like a certain thing. Whereas women are just taught to expect a certain thing from men. Women are not taught how to treat men. And the concept of a good person is caught up in all of this, in how you treat people and what you expect from people. And men are just expected to treat people, and women are just treated to expect people. if that makes any sense. And hopefully it does. But yeah, we've reached that point where it's women have been treated to expect, and men have been expected to treat for so long that we've forgotten how to teach anyone in any other way other than that. Many would call it romantic chivalry. Many would call it feminism. Many would call it gynocentrism. That again, men are expected to treat and women are treated to expect. And it's difficult to get this through to people without setting up a big old education system for the purposes of treating that to people. But the only education system we have is geared toward men bending over backwards and cucking themselves and simping themselves for the sake of women.
Yeah.
And I mean all over the world, even in those places where you think it's the opposite. No, it's not. It's the same everywhere. Even in those so-called patriarchies that you're absolutely sure are patriarchies. No, even those treat women to expect from men and expect men to treat women. I've said it multiple times now in the same rant, and I hope I've got through to anyone.
It's interesting, the societies that people, the cultures that people think of as that patriarchy over there, the things that make them so-called patriarchies simply all involve holding women accountable for having decent character in order to be considered virtuous and treated like a virtuous woman, as opposed to a woman with no virtue. Whereas, all cultures hold men accountable for demonstrating virtue if they are to be treated as a virtuous man. And if they're not, if they're not accountable, then they are not treated as virtuous men. And people criticize them, demonize them. Essentially, they don't get the social approval for being a virtuous man. They might get social approval for being successful or for being entertaining, for being outrageous, whatever, but they're not approved as virtuous men, and they're not trusted as virtuous men. Women demand automatic treatment as virtuous. They demand veneration, not respect. And the term lady used to have some meaning. You had to have certain virtues. The reason women could display more delicate sensibilities in regard to subject matter like sex and sexuality, crude discussions, cuss words, any kind of violence, and anything like that. Women had those options because they demonstrated virtue in those areas. You can pretend to be offended when you hear the word fuck if you never say the word fuck. I cannot pretend to be offended by other people's crude speech because I'm cruder than you are. Right? I will fully.
It sounds like fighting words. No.
Yep, well, and that's the other thing. Women could pretend to be offended by rough behavior, violence, drinking too much, smoking, farting in public, anything like that. And they would, right? Because they didn't do those things. They didn't get into fights. They didn't hit each other. They didn't hit anybody. But now women expect that same right to be taken seriously, acting offended over those behaviors when men engaged in them, and yet still engaged in them themselves. Right? They were entitled to certain concessions not afforded to men because they leaned on being fragile in certain ways. And that fragility then also was a reason why women had certain limitations. If you're too fragile to handle certain things, you cannot then be expected to do jobs that involve those things. Right? And so if you can expect men to carry heavy things for you because you're weaker, then you cannot turn around and say it's discrimination when men don't give you a job that involves picking up and moving heavy things with your hands and not, some device. And this is pretty much common sense 101, right? And feminists fought to get rid of that. And they demanded a level of reverence that and this is the worst part too, right? They'll walk into a place where a guy is doing nothing wrong, but they are offended by something about him. He's not giving enough deference to women in some way or another. And they'll, what's the matter with that guy? Doesn't he respect women? And it'll sound very much like Big Red yelling patriarchy right in your face. What's the matter with you? Don't you respect women? Not very ladylike at all. And then they'll act shocked and surprised if he says, "Why should I?" And
by the way, a man yelling in a woman's face saying, "Don't you respect men?" isn't very manlike either.
No.
Now, figure that out. That how it's neither manlike or ladylike to say you have to respect me for my sex just because I say so. How can it be neither manlike or ladylike? Well, if we could figure that out, ladies and gentlemen, so many of our problems would be fixed.
Yep.
You don't deserve anything just for being a woman, just like you don't deserve anything just for being a man. You don't deserve anything just for being a fucking human being. You deserve things in response for what you do. You deserve reciprocation for the reciprocation you give to what came before you. Does that...
it makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
There's another interesting thing that I can add to this, right? People know the term lady as the counterpart to gentleman. What they don't realize is that the term comes from being the counterpart to the male term for a landowner who was responsible for the welfare of all of the people who lived on his land, known as a lord, a land lord, right? Under whom serfs were subject to his decision making And in a way, serfdom was similar to sharecropping. In that everything that you made, everything that you produced, your landlord owned, and you, whatever benefit you got from it, you got at his discretion. But a lord was supposed to be benevolent and providing care for the people that lived under him, and he was in order to maintain his control and his respect that he received from his serfs. He had to walk a fine line where his authority was tempered with common sense, with a lack of abuse, with a recognition that the people he had under him were humans that would respond harshly if he engaged in abuses. And if he stepped too far, they might haul him out of his castle and kill him. And a lady was the woman of the household in that castle. And a lady had to have care and compassion for the people around her. She had to recognize the experiences of the people around her, because otherwise she might fail to properly support her lord's compassion, and they would both get killed. They would both get hauled out of the castle and killed by the serfs. Even if those serfs might get executed later, they would still be dead. And today, we just use the word lady indiscriminately to describe all women everywhere all the time, while the word gentleman usually is reserved for greetings for an audience. Ladies and gentlemen. But you don't usually hear very many people referring to just your ordinary average guy, that gentleman over there, that dude, that guy, bro, or bruh, but not, gentlemen, let's do this. Hey guys, women still get terms of deference. Men just get terms of commonality. So yeah, this is, that doesn't demonstrate gynocentrism in our society. Maybe explain to me what it does demonstrate, because I do not see it as anything else.
It comes down to what a stranger would call you if they pointed at you while talking to you about their child. We often have this thing in a grocery store. The moment you realize you're a man is when some woman in the grocery store is talking to their child, and they point towards a section of the aisle in the grocery store, and they say, "Over there by where that man is." And you look around and you think, "Oh shit, she's talking about me.
Yep.
I'm that man. I'm the man." And that's or when the teenager whose job it is to pack your fucking groceries, like they refer to you as sir or something like that. Like that's
Yep.
like the highest accolade a man can get is man or sir. Like that's when a boy knows he's a man, and it almost always comes as a complete surprise. Like when some randomer, or rando, as I should say, refers to them as sir or that man. I guess it's different for women because they have this word lady over there where that lady is. I suppose would be the equivalent. Because the male equivalent of lady is gentleman, and no one ever refers to you as a gentleman. Like, unless you're standing there in royal military uniform, like no one's gonna refer to you as a gentleman. Like, that term appears to have disappeared in terms of all but royalty. But lady, the female equivalent of gentleman, still very much exists. Some absolute ratchet hoe could be referred to as a lady if someone in the vicinity is being polite when they refer to them. Over there, where that lady is, that's what they would say to their child. Over there, where that lady is, and yeah, it's indicative of the situation. The average woman can be referred to as a lady, but the average man would never be referred to as a gentleman. Make of that what you will, I suppose.
A howling banshee can get referred to as a lady. Right? If Pygmalion were made into My Fair Lady today, as opposed to back when it was, Liza Doolittle, before her transformation, would have been referred to as a lady. There would have been no distinction made between a gutter snipe and a lady. All females get called ladies. Except if you call me that, I will be insulted. I work for a living. I ain't no lady.
Even if someone goes like, "Hey, lady, you're doing something wrong."
Yeah, no, don't call me a lady. I've got
even if
calluses
it's
on my fingers.
detrimental, because that's like the equivalent of saying, "Hey, mister," like "Hey, lady." It's sort of it's both a term of class endearment and a term of randomization. Hey, lady.
Yeah.
It's very complicated.
And comedy. I'm not gonna do the Jerry Lewis impression.
I was thinking of the Beastie Boys. Hey, ladies.
Yeah, but that was a Jerry Lewis impression.
Okay.
Hey, nice lady. Yeah, he used to be hilarious, but yeah. Any case, yeah, lady being a lady is it's meaningless now, right?
Mm-hmm.
We did get a super chat from Frosted Glass, who said he gave us $2 and said he has an article linking to incels to eugenics, and asked if we're interested. I'll tell you what, that sounds like a load of tripe, which might make fodder for more content. So go ahead and send it to us. But it'll be interesting, if it's long enough and actually makes an argument, then yeah, we might use it, especially if it actually tries to treat incels as a group that has any level of power in anywhere, because we can talk a lot about that. But going on from their mischaracterization of MRAs with pickup artists. Frosted Glass says, send it now. How about if you can send it to me on X, or you can send it through our Discord, which you can find out how to get into the free part of our Discord on honeybadgerbrigade.com. Then that would be a good way. A Twitter DM would be fine as well. If I'm not already following you, sort of poke at me with a tweet at mention me. I read my notifications. You can send it to me that way too. It doesn't have to be DM, unless you don't want to publicly post that. But yeah, I definitely will see it on X. In any case, pickup artists. So there's been years of people trying to make the men's rights movement disavow pickup artists. And the closest that I will get to that is to tell women flat out, straight up, no holds barred, pickup artists are your fault. You created them.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't like them, then you need to do some reformation of your, not just your behavior, but your fucking gullibility.
Yeah.
Right? I'm not susceptible to pickup artistry. Like, there's a reason besides the fact that I'm married. Right? If someone tries to manipulate me like that, it gets the hair up on the back of my neck, and I'm gonna be rude to him. I don't get that way if someone just tries, plays his card, and I have to engage in rejection, because obviously I'm not getting into a relationship if I'm already in a relationship, right? But there's a difference between just honestly, shooting your shot and trying to manipulate someone. That's the latter is a bit bullshit. And the former makes you vulnerable. And if women weren't so rude about rejection, and if women weren't such bitches about rejection, and if women weren't so prone to rejecting when they might be better advised to give a chance, you miss out when you don't get to know a guy. You don't give him a chance if you're not in a relationship. Some of the coolest guys that I've ever met were guys that other women turned down because they thought they were unattractive. But pickup artistry isn't the answer to that, because you haven't formed a genuine connection, and you make yourself vulnerable to false allegations, to later rejection, to the woman deciding that she is a victim of her own choices and using that against you. It's really not advisable, in my opinion, for guys to be part of this group. But that's their choice, right? They can, nobody's going to tell you that you can't do that. I might call you a simp for it, making women the focus of your life, but I'm not going to tell you that, how dare you? I'm not going to tell you that it should be illegal. I think it's just ill-advised. But, the way that the feminist movement reacts, pickup artists teach members how to coerce women into sex and mock the idea of sexual consent.
The definition is quite easy. Pickup artists teach men how to pick up women.
Yeah.
Like, it's right there in the name, and I know there's all sorts of things that aren't right there in the name. But pickup artists don't teach men how to coerce women. If anything, they coerce men into teaching women. When you describe it like that, the terms teach and coerce appear to be interchangeable depending on what narrative you're trying to paint. But yeah, POAs don't teach men to coerce women. They coerce men into picking up women.
Yeah.
And like there's nothing wrong with that in theory. There are things that can go wrong with that if you have a bad teacher. And again, that's what a POA is. It's a teacher. It's not a coercer. It's a teacher. And you can have terrible teachers. And you can have good teachers, especially when it comes to the art of picking up women. Because it's an impossibly complicated art. Because women are so impossibly complicated.
Mm-hmm.
So this is, despite how short this sentence is, they've swapped over enough words and enough concepts to make the idea of how to attract a woman being fascism, basically. That's what they've done. They've turned like, hey men, like here's how I think you can attract a woman, and that's rape now. And yeah, that's what they've been doing for fucking 20 years or so. I don't know why I'm still sat here trying to unravel this concept, but that's all it ever was. Yes, it was adopted by some wrong-uns whose names I won't mention. But yeah, of course there was always going to be a community trying to teach men how to attract women. I mean, why wouldn't there be such a community? The oldest profession in the world is prostitutism. You would assume the second oldest profession in the world. Is how to teach men how to do that without prostitutism. And it kind of always has been. It's whatever.
Well, and for anybody who thinks pickup artistry is a new thing, you understand, like, thinking about movie tropes, for instance. Movie tropes follow cultural realities. They usually are exaggerations of cultural realities, but they do follow cultural realities. So with that in mind, go find a 1960 movie called The Apartment with Jack Lemmon in it, and see if you see any similarities, say, between the character Bud Baxter and Quagmire. Quagmire is basically a parody of Bud Baxter. Like, it's the same guy, just in a cartoon. He looks like him. He dresses like him. It's hilarious. But yeah, in the movie, Baxter he's not just a pickup artist himself. He is he lends his apartment out to, like, his bosses for their extramarital affairs, and he has it set up where, when he pushes a button, things come out of the walls to make the room more romantic. The lighting changes, and there's a record player, because back in the day, record players were the thing. But the table flips over, and all of a sudden there's a wine set. He doesn't have a big weird chin like Quagmire, but that might just sort of be a caricature exaggeration of another character that he played. I can't remember the last name. Let me see if I can go find that really quick, because it's not in my. It's not on the tip of my tongue. It's one of those things that Professor Tate. Fate. Why the hell did I say Tate? Oh, because Andrew Tate. But Professor Fate.
Yes.
Professor Fate was. I think they actually put a chin prosthetic. Let's see if I can find a picture of Professor Fate. Let me look that up and see if I can show it. Nope, they didn't. They just he actually had a little he was carrying a little extra weight in comparison to his younger or other roles when he played Professor Fate, but not very much, I don't think. But that's another one. There's 5 years difference between those two movies, right? If you haven't seen The Great Race, by the way, you should. It's a great movie. And in fact, pretty much any movie where you see Jack Lemmon in the credits, great movie. He had a great career. But yeah, pickup artistry, like the behaviors that would be considered pickup artistry today, that's existed for a long time. It's not even new. It's just that today there are guys who make money telling other guys how to do that. It's not really a smart idea, because, like I said, it just makes you vulnerable. But it does happen. It does exist. And it's interesting the way that they describe this, because most of pickup artistry is about psychology. And it's essentially an instruction manual based on the beliefs of the pickup artist community as to how women react to different male behaviors. The idea that, if you change the way you behave, women will not be able to resist you. And women get upset about that when a man does it. They'll walk right up to you with their 6-inch heels that make them look taller than they really are, and point their heavily manicured, altered finger in your face or poke at your chest or chest bump you with their fake tits and shake their weaves at you and frown at you with their clown makeup that completely changes the appearance of the structure of their face and call you dishonest for
Their 15-pound
that.
eyelashes.
Yeah, they are literally airbrushing their face now with makeup. I've seen the commercials. I'm probably allergic to that just the same as I am all the stuff. But I mean, come on, guys. I'm allergic to grass. What do you want? Twice. But yeah, like it's kind of when they get done, they will turn their fake ass to you and walk away, trotting away on those fake heels that make them look taller than they really are. You know, and even years ago, my generation, like we had to pretend to be linebackers for some reason. You know, with like the shirt that had the shoulder pads. The worst thing would be if you had an undershirt that had the shoulder pads too. And then you'd have the shirt with shoulder pads. And then on top of the shirt with the shoulder pads, you had the jacket with shoulder pads. And by the time you got done, you looked like you were going to tackle the other girls in the hallway to get them out of your way on the way to class. or your office. You should have been wearing a helmet. But yeah, it's kind of hypocritical for women to be mad about pickup artistry because everything women do for beauty is essentially the same thing. It's about manipulation. The last thing in the before they get to other gendered hate speech section is the group that I actually think pisses feminists off the most. Men going their own way.
The final boss.
Yeah. How dare you, men? How dare you be so interested in women as a pickup artist that you change your behavior to make yourself more attractive to women? But even worse, how dare you tell them no?
Yes.
Men going their own way suggests society is rigged against men and that it is best to avoid women and even mainstream society altogether. So you're not allowed to, let's see where we are here. You're not allowed to be rejected by women. And you're not, and be abused as a result of that. You're not allowed to have that happen to you because that makes you dangerous. And if you complain about it, that's even worse, right? You're not allowed to care how women who don't reject you treat you and what they might do to you if they change their minds. You're not allowed to make women the focus of your life. You're not allowed to care about women. You're not allowed to want to be with women. And you're not allowed to change your behavior to make yourself more attractive to women. And you're not allowed to reject women and tell them no. So what's left that men are supposed to do, ladies? What is the alternative to any of those four things? Because I'm a little confused as to how men are supposed to live. Society being rigged against men. This is literally their complaint. How dare these men suggest that society is rigged against men? We're the victims of society, ladies. How dare they make that suggestion? And how dare they avoid us? What is wrong with those men? They literally don't want you to do what they're telling you to do. Leave us alone. How dare you leave us alone? What's wrong with you?
Who are you? That's where Mike is supposed to come in.
You'll notice when feminists want to reach for a go-to insult against men, they don't reach for MGTOW, do they?
No.
Even though MGTOW's been around since longer than Incel, I think Incel's an entirely made-up term. It was just adopted by certain men because it was popularized by certain feminists.
Well, hell, men going their own way used to just be called hermits.
When women want to insult a man, they call him an incel, because incel means a man who wants a woman but isn't getting one. You would think the go-to incel would be a man who doesn't want a woman at all, a man who has escaped the grasp of women, but it's not. The go-to incel for feminists is a man who wants a woman but can't get one. And it would take such a long time to fully illustrate how telling this is. That women don't want to be avoided by men. Women want to be pursued by men to no avail. Women like having men to reject. And again, we don't have time to get into how fucking complex that is. But women like being surrounded by as many loser men as possible, so that they can spend each and every day rejecting as many men as possible. All women, by the way, not just the ugly ones who like to live in a fantasy where they are beautiful and they can reject as many men as possible. The same goes for the beautiful ones, and this is why I have to push back on this stereotype that feminists are all just ugly blue-haired lesbians. No, a great deal of feminists are beautiful women. They just don't want to be rejected by men. They can't handle rejection by men, and this is why when the movement, men going their own way, and I do call it a movement. I know this is a controversial thing to say, but the active verb is going, so it should be a movement. Men going their own way should be men moving away from women, and this is why nobody talks about MGTOW, especially not in the mainstream media, especially not in the feminist academia movement. They don't even like to acknowledge the existence of men who are just done with women. They're just like, no, the juice is not worth the squeeze. Go fuck yourself. I'm gonna live in a log cabin with my guns and my dogs and whatever it is men like. I don't know. It depends on the man. And yeah, it sort of goes to show you the most popular stereotypes are not the most popular movements. Feminists and women in general like to imagine that everyone who disagrees with them is an incel. Everyone who disagrees with them must be someone who loves them but can't quite touch them. They can't quite get around to receiving the holy touch of a woman. But MGTOWs, no, they don't exist. Men who just don't want us? That's not possible. There's no such phenomenon in this world. Men who have somehow escaped the psychological gravitational torture that we've imposed on them. No. Such things are not real. And if any man claims he is one of those, well, he's just an incel. If a man claims he's a MGTOW, he's just an incel. If a man claims he's not interested in women, it must mean he's interested in women, but he just hasn't had the blessing of one. And yeah, I don't know where to take it from there. I don't know. Every time I try to explain the infinite narcissism of modern women, I can't do it.
Yeah, the rabbit hole is deep and wide, and that's not slut shaming. I can't help myself sometimes. It's just the behavior of modern women kind of lends itself to those kind of metaphors, right?
Yeah.
So that's basically our discussion for tonight, because I don't want to try to get into the next section. We will finish this article next week, and then we are going to get into another of their articles, how to counter the Manosphere's toxic influence.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah. So they've defined the problem. They've mischaracterized the basically every men's group out there. They really don't hone in on traditionalist men, because I think that would piss off people in a lot of countries that are considered second or third world countries that are treated. They're given special protected status. If you start, getting upset about traditionalism, you start running up against certain religious groups that you're not allowed to criticize in a lot of places. So they just focused on the men who are bucking the tradition of ladies first, one way or another, and that's pretty much the unifying factor, the one unifying factor within the so-called manosphere, which is a term that they stole from the manosphere and redefined to suit their own terms, because it used to just be a term that described the various groups of people who were describing issues affecting men from a perspective of their lifestyle choices that they feel were the best solutions for those issues. And now feminists basically only define it as those evil groups of bad men who don't subscribe to the philosophy ladies first. So with that, I think I've read all of the super chats and super chows. Don't have any rumble rants. I will thank everybody for listening. Thanks to my two co-hosts. Let's see. I'm not. Frosted Glass. I am not at Honey Badger Bite. Let me fix that. I'm gonna reply to you really quick. There we go. I have sent you my name there. If anybody that else feels like following me on X, you can. I mean, that's my handle right there. And I've gotten to the point. I try to follow people back as much as I can, but when I click follow to follow back, I'm getting followed faster now. Right at this moment, then I can keep up with that without hitting up against X's follow limits. That they use it to keep bots from rapidly following a lot of people to get access to DMs and then send you messages on buying their porn or their crypto or whatever it is they're trying to sell you. And I made a comment under one of Homath's posts, and it kind of blew up a little bit. And so I ended up with a whole shit ton of new followers and a bunch of bots, by the way, too. So yeah, it's I will do my best to see you and follow you, but if not, like I said, after you followed me, just poke me in the notifications, and I'll follow you back so I can see your DMs. And if you want to, you can DM it to me or you can post it to me publicly. Either way, we'll take a look at it. Thanks everybody for listening. Thanks to my co-hosts for sticking out this weird material with me. And thanks very much to Brian, without whom I would not be able to do this with a vertical chat included. And everybody else that works in the background to make HBR Talk happen. And good night, all.
We'll see you next Thursday.
See you.
Men's rights activists are machines, dude. Okay? They are literal machines. They are talking point machines. They are impossible to fucking deal with, especially if you have like a couple dudes who have good memory on top of that too. Holy shit. You're